Columbia and Ellicott City consistently battle it out as the top places to live in Howard County, but if you're considering a move here, it may be hard to decide which one is best for you. So in this video, I'm going to cover the differences between Columbia and Ellicott City so you can determine the best place for you to move to. So let's just dive right into it. Hey everyone, my name is Eddie and I'm a realtor here in Maryland. And if this is your first time visiting the channel, thank you for being here. I've made it my mission to help people just like you determine the best places to move in Maryland. I give you the market updates, the top neighborhoods, and everything you should know before making a move here. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. And first, I think it's important to talk about the location of Columbia and Ellicott City. And first, they are both in Howard County, Maryland, which is probably one of the main reasons you're considering them. And Howard County is located in central Maryland in a really ideal spot just to the west of Baltimore and the north of DC. And Columbia is on the east side of the county and is split in the middle by Route 29. It ends at Route 108 on the north and west sides, I-95 on the east side, and follows somewhat along Route 32 on the southern side with a few exceptions. And Ellicott City is just to the north of Columbia, and it also has Route 29 running through it, but its northern and eastern border is defined by the Patapsco River, the south side by Columbia, and the west side reaches out to Route 32. And again, because of the location of Columbia and Ellicott City, they are the ideal commuter locations, which is why a lot of you are watching this video right now. It's so easy to commute to Baltimore, Annapolis, Fort Meade, and even DC. Now, the thing you might miss about Ellicott City when you're looking at it on a map is it's actually much larger geographically than what you see in Google Maps. If you type in just Ellicott City in Google Maps, you're going to see this image here. But what you're missing is the entire western side of Ellicott City. So what you really have to do is do that and then type in the zip code 21042 to see the entire western side of Ellicott City. And this is really important because it's the western side of Ellicott City that makes it so different than Columbia. While Columbia is pretty much a solid suburban sprawl to every single corner of it, Ellicott City is a mix. It has the suburban sprawl, but it also has the historic downtown. And with that 21042 zip code, it also has a lot of rural properties. But the difference between the two suburban areas of Ellicott City and Columbia is that in Columbia, it's a master planned community, so every single neighborhood in here is intentional. Unlike Ellicott City, which has dozens and dozens of individual HOAs that have nothing to do with each other, all of the neighborhoods, or most of the neighborhoods in Columbia, fall under the blanket of the Columbia Association. And this is a massive association, the largest in Maryland, which has 10 villages underneath it. And one of those is actually not even in Columbia at all, it's in Clarksville. But regardless, these are massive communities that were master planned many years ago. And each community has their unique style and subculture. Each village has their own individual HOA with their own rules on what you can do to your home, on the style, on the paint colors, and you have the overarching Columbia Association, which governs as well. And even though Columbia is full of these dense suburbs, it really doesn't feel like this. And I've talked about this before, how Columbia was intentionally made so that these communities, these neighborhoods and the gas stations and shopping centers were hidden in the trees. And it's really obvious as you're driving through Columbia. I mean, when you come up onto a gas station, and I've said this before too, you don't even realize that you're close to it until you're actually turning into the gas station. And this was all purposeful as part of the master plan. And because this is a master plan community, there are so many amenities that are connected to each other. You have walking paths throughout all 10 villages that are interconnected. There's amazing amenities throughout the Columbia Association. You have 23 outdoor pools, 4 indoor pools. There's gyms and fitness centers, 2 golf courses, and a ton of other really unique amenities that you won't find anywhere else in Howard County. But here's the thing you won't immediately notice when searching on Zillow, and that's that Columbia Association has an overarching CPRA fee. Now, you have your individual village HOA fees as well, and then you have an overarching yearly fee from the Columbia Association called the CPRA fee, and that's going to cover the things like the sidewalks and playgrounds and the upkeep of a lot of these centers, but it does not grant you access to all of the pools and golf courses and the places you need passes to enter. So although it lessens the price of those, it does not give you immediate access. And I go over to calculate this in my video dedicated specifically to Columbia, and I'll link that right above. But generally, a single family home is going to be paying somewhere between $1,300 and $1,500 a year. So just under or just over $100 a month to be a part of the Columbia Association as a whole, on top of your HOA fee. Now, that's not too crazy, but it is something to consider if you're not going to be using those amenities. Now, what I've noticed is that people who move here with kids or really want to be involved in the gyms and the clubs and all the amenities here, it's totally worth it to pay that fee. I mean, After all, $100 a month or just over $100 a month is not a lot of money to be a part of this. And obviously you have to pay for those extra fees. But if you don't want to use those amenities, you don't have kids, you have no interest in it, you may be wasting that money that could be used elsewhere. Ellicott City, on the other hand, has no overarching HOA governing all of the communities. They're all individual. They all have their own HOAs. So if you're looking for more freedom of what to do with your property, less fees, Ellicott City is going to be your place to go. But again, with that comes a few less amenities. Now, if walkability and bikeability are important to you, then Columbia is going to have Ellicott City beat for the most part. But there are some great areas in Ellicott City that have a lot of walkability and bikeability, like the areas around the Turf Valley Town Center, and even being close to historic downtown Ellicott City is going to be a great place for walkability. Maybe not bikeability so much because the hills there are pretty intense, but definitely walkability. But with Columbia having 10 villages with sidewalks pretty much everywhere and interconnected trails, it's pretty hard to beat the walkability and bikeability of Columbia. And in Ellicott City, there are not many places where you're going to be walking to the schools, where in Columbia, that's a very common thing to be able to walk to school, walk to the library, walk to the grocery store, and just not so easy to find that in Ellicott City. Now, all of these things I've talked about so far are very important, but I would say one of the biggest factors influencing a family's decision of whether or not to move to Columbia or Ellicott City is the school districting. And before I jump into this, I have to add the disclaimer that these school districts can change by year. And we've seen this in recent years with the new addition of the Guilford Park High School on the east side of the county. So do not rely on me for the school districting. You have to go to the county website, and absolutely do not rely on Zillow. It is wrong so much of the time with school districting. So always go to the Howard County Public Schools website for your districting information. But for the most part, Ellicott City and Columbia have very distinct school districts and ratings that set them apart. And going off high school ratings on greatschools.org, let's kick it off with the Ellicott City ratings. Glen Elk has a rating of a 9 out of 10. River Hill, 10 out of 10. Centennial, 10 out of 10. Marriott's Ridge, 10 out of 10. Mount Hebron, 9 out of 10. And Wild Lake, a very small portion of Wild Lake in this area, as a 7 out of 10. And Columbia, on the other hand, has some overlap here, but the ratings are Wild Lake with a 7 out of 10, and that's the majority of the district is in Columbia. River Hill, a very small portion, is in Columbia, and that's a 10 out of 10. Then you have Atholton, 8 out of 10. Howard, 8 out of 10. Hammond, 6 out of 10. Long Reach, 5 out of 10. And Oakland Mills with a 5 out of 10. So other than a very small section of Columbia that can be districted to River Hill, for the most part, the school ratings in Columbia are lower than that of Ellicott City. Now, there can be a lot of reasons for this, like economic differences, the age of the schools, the age of the communities surrounding these schools, but regardless of the reasoning, the ratings are what they are, and it is something to consider. Now, with those higher school ratings does come a significantly higher cost. The median price point of a home in Ellicott City at the time of this video is $745,000, where the median price point in Columbia is $500,000. So a $245,000 price difference between the two. And a lot of this does have to do with the larger rural properties and estates that you can have in Ellicott City, which you just don't have the room for in Columbia. And Columbia was starting to get developed in the 60s, and a lot of it was completed in the 70s and 80s. So you're talking about much older homes here, much smaller homes. They didn't make them as big as they do now. So Ellicott City kind of has the jump on Columbia because so many of the areas are newer. There's much larger estates, like I said, much larger properties that allow room for these to be bigger. But regardless, you have to take that into consideration when determining where to live. Now, even though schools and the real estate market and amenities are probably the most important factors to consider, there are some other differences between the two. Columbia does have Ellicott City beat as far as shopping and dining goes, and it's not even close. Pretty much everything you need is right in Columbia, right off of Snowden River Parkway and 175. I mean, that area is packed full. That is where everyone goes from Columbia and Ellicott City for their shopping and dining. And that's not even taking into consideration the Columbia Mall, the Columbia Town Center, and the newer Meriwether District. Now, it's important to note that Ellicott City does have a lot of shopping and dining. I mean, compared to other cities and towns in Maryland, it beats so many of them with all the shopping and dining on Route 40, commercial retail there. But when you're comparing it to Columbia, it just does not stack up. But here's the reason I don't think this matters so much, and that's that these towns are right next to each other. So if you're living in Ellicott City, you're going to be shopping and dining in Columbia. And if you're in Columbia, there's inevitably going to be something that you need in Ellicott City to drive there for, and they're so close. that it's going to feel like you're driving within your own town. So I wouldn't rate this as a major factor in determining which one to live in. Now let's wrap it up with traffic, because I know that's important to a lot of you, whether you're commuting to work or just concerned with how long it's going to take you to get to places. And when you're looking at the communities themselves and the neighborhoods, they're going to feel almost exactly the same. They're not really congested within the neighborhoods. They're kind of off the beaten path, which is a good thing for these communities in Ellicott City and Columbia. But along Route 29, they're both going to be pretty congested. That's a major commuter route. It's where a lot of other commercial retail and dining is. So along Route 29, they're going to feel very similar there as well, with more congestion. But what I've noticed is it's slightly more difficult to make my way around Columbia in their commercial and retail areas than it is in Ellicott City. And I'm talking about areas like Dobbin Road, the Dobbin Shopping Center off of Route 175. These areas can get so congested that I actually will turn around if I'm trying to turn into a shopping center and I actually can't make the light because it's so congested inside of the shopping center. I'm talking about places like where the Walmart is and the Panera. They can get pretty bad, and it's something to consider. But overall, I do not think traffic is a major consideration in determining whether or not to live in Columbia or Ellicott City. Now, if you're considering living up north in Carroll County or Frederick County, where there's no traffic, farther up into the rural areas, sure, that matters a whole lot. Or even the western side of Howard County, like Dayton, Glenelg, Glenwood areas, those are going to be important factors to consider if you don't want any traffic at all. But comparing Columbia to Ellicott City is pretty much nominal. Now, there are a ton of smaller nuanced differences between Columbia and Ellicott City, and after living in Howard County for 16 years, I've learned almost all of them. So if there's something you're curious about or a question that I just did not answer for you, put it in the comments below or send me a message and I would be happy to answer that for you. And if you're from Ellicott City or Columbia and you've lived here before, put in the comments below, what did I miss? What's important about the differences between these two areas? What should the people moving here know before making that move? And if that's you, if you're considering a move here, whether it's a month away or a year away, I would be happy to help you. It's never too soon to connect with me, and the best way to do that is to go in the description below or the comments and click on the link to schedule a one-on-one consultation. We'll get a plan together for your move. We'll talk about the next steps so that your move goes as smoothly as possible. And as always, if you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe so you stay up to date on all of my videos about moving to Maryland.